The brass key, cool and substantial in his palm, felt impossibly weighty. Arthur Harrison, a man whose existence had always unfolded with the predictable cadence of school bells and lesson plans, now stood before a locked door. His heart, usually a steady drum, pulsed with an unfamiliar thrill. This wasn't the familiar entrance to his modest bungalow, nor the unassuming shed housing his gardening tools. This was the door to his study, now a temporary vault for the object that had so thoroughly seized his imagination, an antique wooden desk. He'd spent the morning in a near frenzy, delicately extracting the desk's drawers. Each creaking protest offered a small tremor of its storied past. The air, thick with the scent of aged oak and something indefinably sweet like dried potpourri, enveloped him. His fingers had traced every seam, tapped every panel, probing for the elusive secret he instinctively knew resided within. It wasn't a mere hunch, it was a visceral certainty, a whisper echoing from history. The grain of the wood, subtly mismatched in one spot on the right side panel, and the faint, almost invisible line where two pieces of timber met, imperfectly aligned by the original craftsman, these were the telltale signs. He'd nearly overlooked it, so ingeniously concealed, a tiny, almost imperceptible sliver of wood, blending seamlessly with the surrounding texture. Only by angling a flashlight just so, catching the minute difference in texture, had he unearthed it. A small, nearly invisible button designed for a singular press. He depressed it, and with a soft click, a narrow compartment, no wider than his hand, sprang open from the desk's side. Nestled within a velvet-lined recess lay a stack of yellowed envelopes, bound with a faded silk ribbon. Each bore an address in elegant looping script. He hadn't dared to open them. The sheer weight of anticipation, a curious blend of awe and trepidation, had been too immense. He craved the perfect moment, the proper reverence. Solitude was essential, a sanctuary from the mundane world. Now, with a cup of chamomile tea steaming gently beside him and the soft luminescence of his reading lamp illuminating the desk, Arthur settled in. He carefully untied the ribbon. It disintegrated slightly at his touch, a testament to its age. The topmost letter, its paper fragile and brittle, bore the date, April 14th, 1863. With trembling fingers he unfolded the first missive. The ink, though faded, remained legible, each stroke a testament to a long-vanished hand. The words began, "My dearest Eliza," and with that salutation Arthur felt his surroundings dissolve. He was no longer in his quiet study. He was transported to an era of conflict and yearning, a world where words on paper carried the gravity of life and death. The letters unveiled a narrative of profound love, separation, and a desperate yearning for reunion. They were penned by Thomas, a soldier in the Union Army, to his beloved Eliza back home. Thomas's depictions of camp life were stark and unsparing. The biting cold, the ever-present specter of disease, the constant gnawing fear. Yet, interwoven through these grim realities were expressions of an enduring affection that shimmered like a beacon. He wrote of Eliza's eyes like the summer sky, and her laughter, a melody that haunts my dreams. Arthur devoured the first few letters, his breath catching in his throat. He felt like an interloper, privy to the most intimate thoughts and emotions of two long-departed souls. But the pull was irresistible. Each letter concluded with a fervent prayer for peace and a heartfelt declaration of love, signed simply, "Your devoted Thomas." He read for hours, the stack of letters slowly diminishing. The tea grew cold, shadows deepened beyond his window, but Arthur remained oblivious. He was utterly immersed in their world. He learned of Thomas's regiment, the battles they endured, the comrades he lost. He gleaned Eliza's anxieties, her struggle to sustain their farm, her unwavering faith in Thomas's safe return. In one letter, Thomas described seeing a flock of migrating geese, a poignant reminder of Eliza's steadfastness, their innate homeward journey. In another, he recounted a makeshift Christmas celebration, sharing meager rations but finding solace in the camaraderie of his fellow soldiers. Then, he reached a letter dated July 4, 1863. Thomas wrote of the Battle of Gettysburg, his words etched with the raw terror of it all. He described the relentless artillery barrage, the screams of the wounded, the sheer scale of the carnage. He recounted fighting for days, witnessing friends fall, the desperate charge up Little Round Top. "The ground," he penned, "is stained with the blood of brothers, north and south. God grant this madness ends soon." Arthur felt a chill, despite the warmth of the room. He grasped the historical significance of the date, but reading it through Thomas's eyes lent it a terrifying new dimension. The letters continued, growing increasingly weary, yet Thomas's love for Eliza remained a steadfast constant. He wrote of yearning for the simple pleasures of home, Eliza's cooking, the scent of her hair, the tranquil peace of their farm. The correspondence served as a lifeline, a thread connecting them across an impossible distance and through unimaginable horrors. Arthur reached the final letter in the stack. It was dated April 8, 1865, just a day before Lee's surrender at Appomattox. Thomas wrote of the end being near, of profound exhaustion, but also of a burning hope. He spoke of returning home, of rebuilding their lives, of the children he hoped they would have. He pledged Eliza a lifetime of devotion, a love that would never wane. The letter concluded, as always, "Your devoted Thomas." There was no letter from Eliza, no reply to Thomas's last hopeful words. The silence was deafening. Arthur leaned back, a profound ache in his chest. What had Tiny Short transpired? Had Thomas made it home? Had Eliza ever received this final testament of his love? The uncertainty gnawed at him. The narrative felt incomplete. A symphony abruptly halted mid-note. He carefully retied the letters with a fresh silk ribbon, his hands still trembling slightly. He knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his bones, that this was more than just a collection of old letters. This was a fragment of history, a human story that had lain concealed for over a century and a half. It wasn't solely about Thomas and Eliza. It was about the countless untold narratives of love and loss that permeated that brutal conflict. Arthur knew he couldn't hoard this treasure. It belonged to the world, to historians, to anyone seeking to comprehend the true human cost of war and the enduring power of love. But how to present it? How to ensure their story was recounted with the dignity and respect it deserved? He considered the local historical society, a small, underfunded organization often overwhelmed by well-meaning volunteers. Then he thought of grander institutions, universities, museums. The prospect felt daunting. He decided to begin modestly. He would meticulously transcribe the letters, ensuring every word was preserved. Then he would approach Dr. Eleanor Vance, a historian he knew from his American history teaching days. Dr. Vance was renowned for her meticulous research and her passion for unearthing forgotten narratives. She would know the proper course of action. As he closed the study door, locking it once more, Arthur felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was no longer just about a $20 desk. It was about giving voice to the voiceless, about bringing a lost love story back into the light. He gazed at his hands, hands that had once guided countless students through the labyrinth of historical dates and figures. Now they were poised to unveil a truth that would resonate far beyond the confines of a classroom, a truth he was now inextricably bound to tell. The weight of the secret had lifted, replaced by the exhilarating burden of responsibility. He had found not just a hidden compartment, but a hidden purpose. The love story of Thomas and Eliza, dormant for so long, had found its unlikely custodian. And Arthur Harrison, the retired teacher, was ready to embark on his most important lesson yet. He would ensure their story would no longer be a silent whisper in the dark, but a resonant echo for generations to come. The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying, but above all, profoundly right. He spent the next few days in a state of focused intensity, transcribing the letters with meticulous care. He acquired special archival paper and a fine-tipped pen, treating each word as if it were a fragile artifact. He researched the regiments Thomas mentioned, cross-referencing names and dates with historical records. He discovered that Thomas's regiment had indeed participated in the battles he described, affirming the authenticity of the letters. The weight of their reality pressed in on him, solidifying his resolve. This wasn't just a poignant tale, it was a verifiable piece of history. One evening, as he typed the last words of the final letter into his computer, he felt a wave of bittersweet satisfaction. The story was complete, at least in its transcribed form. But the true ending, Thomas and Eliza's fate, remained elusive. That mystery, he realized, was the next chapter in his story. He looked at the old wooden desk, no longer just a yard sale find, but a portal to the past, a silent witness to a love that transcended time. He smiled, a quiet, knowing smile. Mr. Harrison's love for old things had just unearthed something truly extraordinary. The discovery at the yard sale. The crisp morning air of late October bit at Arthur's ears, a familiar chill he'd learned to appreciate in his retirement. He clutched his thermos, the warmth seeping through the metal a welcome contrast to the nippy breeze. Saturdays had become his sacred yard sale days, a ritual that blended his love for history with a penchant for a good bargain. He wasn't looking for anything specific, just the elusive thrill of discovery. He spotted the hand-painted sign from a block away, nailed crookedly to a lamppost. Yard sale, everything must go. It was scrawled in a child's enthusiastic, if unpracticed, hand. As he pulled his sensible sedan to the curb, a modest two-story house painted a faded robin's egg blue revealed itself behind a sprawling oak tree. The yard was a chaotic tableau of forgotten treasures, dusty porcelain figurines, stacks of well-loved paperbacks, a deflated kiddie pool, and an assortment of tools that looked like they'd seen better decades. An elderly woman, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, presided over the organized chaos. She wore a floral apron over a sensible cardigan and offered a warm, if slightly weary, smile. "Morning, dear," she said, her voice raspy from years of talking. "Find anything interesting?" Arthur, a man of quiet observation, preferred to browse before engaging. He nodded, returning her smile, and began his methodical circuit. He ran a hand over a chipped antique radio, its veneer peeling like sunburnt skin. He picked up a tarnished silver locket, wondering about the secrets it might once have held. His gaze then snagged on a piece of furniture tucked away in a shadowed corner of the garage, partially obscured by a stack of old newspapers. It was a desk, old and unassuming, crafted from dark wood that had absorbed countless years of light and shadow. Its surface bore the marks of a lifetime, ink stains, faint ring marks from forgotten coffee cups, and a network of tiny scratches that told a silent story of use. It wasn't ornate or particularly elegant, just solid and functional, with a series of small dovetailed drawers on either side of the knee-hole. The price tag, a small sticky note, declared, "Not $20. Arthur felt a familiar pull, a whisper of intrigue. He ran his hand over the smooth, worn top, the wood cool beneath his fingertips. He pulled open the drawers one by one. The left-hand side held a few desiccated paper clips and a forgotten rubber band. The right was empty, save for a thin film of dust. He knelt, peering underneath, checking for structural integrity. The joints were tight, the wood still strong despite its age. There was something about it, a quiet dignity that appealed to him. "$20, you say?" Arthur asked, standing up and turning to the woman. She bustled over, her smile widening. "Yes, dear. My late husband's. Sat in his study for 50 years. Good solid piece, but we're downsizing. Can't take everything." She patted the desk fondly. "He always said it was a good thinking desk." "I'll take it," Arthur decided, almost before the words were fully out of her mouth. He felt a rare surge of excitement. The desk wasn't a showpiece, but it had character, history. It felt like a good investment, even if it was just $20. Loading it into his car proved to be a bit of a challenge. The desk, while not overly large, was surprisingly heavy. The woman's grandson, a gangly teenager with a skateboard under his arm, ambled over to help, grumbling good-naturedly about early mornings. Together, they wrestled it into the trunk, with the back seats folded down, the top edge of the desk just barely clearing the rear window. Back home, Arthur wheeled the desk into his study, a cozy room lined with bookshelves and smelling faintly of old paper and pipe tobacco. He set about cleaning it, a task he found meditative. He wiped away decades of grime with a damp cloth, revealing the rich grain of the wood beneath. He used a soft brush to sweep out the dust from the corners of the drawers. As he cleaned the central drawer, his fingers brushed against something peculiar. At the very back of the drawer, nestled against the rear panel, was a small, almost imperceptible groove. He pressed, and with a faint click, a thin strip of wood, no wider than his thumb, slid inward, revealing a shallow, secret compartment. His breath hitched. This was the kind of detail that thrilled him, the hidden ingenuity of old craftsmanship. Inside, carefully wrapped in a piece of faded, brittle linen, was a stack of letters. They were bound with a thin, fraying red ribbon. The paper was yellowed and fragile, the ink a faded sepia. The script, though elegant, was unfamiliar, a testament to a bygone era. A shiver, not of cold, but of anticipation, ran down Arthur's spine. He handled them with the utmost care, his historian's instinct taking over. He gently untied the ribbon, the silk almost disintegrating at his touch. The top letter was dated April 12th, 1863. The year alone sent a jolt through him. The Civil War. He unfolded the first letter, his heart thrumming. The handwriting, though faded, was clear and masculine. It began, "My dearest Evelyn." Arthur settled into his armchair, the weight of the letters in his hands a tangible link to the past. He began to read, slowly, carefully, piecing together the words, the phrases, the sentiments. The letters spoke of longing, of fear, of a profound and enduring love. They painted a vivid picture of a soldier's life, of battles fought and comrades lost, interspersed with tender assurances to his beloved. He learned of a soldier named Thomas, serving with the 12th New York Infantry, writing to his Evelyn from various encampments. The narrative tension built with each letter. Thomas wrote of skirmishes, of hunger, of the constant threat of disease. He described the harsh realities of war with a poignant blend of duty and despair. But always, he returned to Evelyn, to his hopes for their future, to the strength her memory gave him. Arthur felt an intimate connection to these long-dead souls, witnessing their love story unfold through their own words. One letter, dated July 5, 1863, spoke of a brutal engagement near a town called Gettysburg. Thomas described the carnage, the sheer scale of the battle, and his own miraculous survival. His relief was palpable, but so was his weariness. He longed for home, for peace, for Evelyn. Arthur read through the afternoon, the outside world fading into insignificance. The letters were a portal, transporting him to a different time, a different reality. The last letter, dated August 10, 1863, was shorter, its script a little weaker. Thomas spoke of being wounded, of recuperating in a field hospital. His tone was hopeful, despite his injuries, certain he would be home soon. He ended with a promise. "I will return to you, my dearest, and we will build our life together, away from this terrible conflict." But there were no more letters from Thomas after that. Arthur sat in silence, the weight of the unfinished narrative pressing down on him. What happened to Thomas? Did he make it home to Evelyn? Did she ever know? The mystery gnawed at him. These weren't just old letters. They were a fragment of a life, a lost love, a secret history. The sheer intimacy of their revelations, the raw emotion preserved on those fragile pages, was unlike anything he had encountered in his years of historical research. This wasn't just a discovery. It was an obligation. He had stumbled upon a story that deserved to be told, a voice from the past that needed to be heard. The historians would be more than shocked, they would be captivated. A bargain and a new treasure. Evelyn strode the length of her compact living room, the intricate Persian rug a familiar softness beneath her worn slippers. "I'm telling you, Arthur, this is it. This is monumental." Arthur, perched on his favorite armchair, peered over the top of his reading glasses. "Evelyn, my love, every time you unearth a tarnished brooch at a street market, you proclaim it monumental. Remember that, authentic. Roman coin that proved to be a cleverly painted washer?" A warm, rumbling chuckle escaped him. "This is different," she insisted, halting abruptly to gesticulate with the sheaf of letters clutched in her hand. "These date back to the Civil War, from a soldier named Thomas to a woman named Clara, and they are, well, extraordinary." He finally lowered his book, a spark of genuine curiosity kindling in his eyes. "Extraordinary in what way?" "They're not merely battlefield dispatches or dry accounts of camp life," Evelyn explained, her voice quickening with fervor. "They're profoundly intimate. A forbidden romance, Arthur, a clandestine child, and a historical revelation that, if these prove true, will rewrite an entire chapter of the war." Arthur slowly rose from the armchair, his joints protesting with a soft creak. He moved to the small antique table where Evelyn had meticulously arranged some of the correspondence. His usually serene expression tightened as he absorbed a few lines, his brow furrowing deeply. "Good heavens," he breathed, his voice barely audible. "If this is authentic, the ramifications are staggering." "Precisely," Evelyn exclaimed, a wave of vindication washing over her. "But here's the challenge. They're incredibly fragile. I've done what I can with my rudimentary archival knowledge, but they demand professional handling, a dedicated conservator. And then, the historians. They'll need to authenticate them, meticulously research the claims." She wrung her hands. "It will be costly, Arthur. Likely, very costly." Arthur gently picked up one of the brittle envelopes, turning it with extreme care in his fingers. "And where, my dear, do we propose to procure these funds?" His gaze swept around their comfortable yet unpretentious home, a silent acknowledgment of their fixed incomes. A sigh fluttered from Evelyn's lips. "That's where the desk comes in." Arthur's eyes widened slightly. "The desk? The rather charming, if somewhat rickety piece of furniture you acquired for $20? Evelyn nodded, a resolute glint in her eyes. "It's beautiful, Arthur, and quite unique. Those intricate carvings, the hidden compartments. It's more than just an old desk. I suspect it's valuable. Perhaps remarkably valuable." He considered her words, then the letters, then the faint aroma of cedar and ancient paper that perfumed the room. "So, we sell the desk to finance the letter's preservation and investigation." "It feels poetic, doesn't it?" Evelyn said, a tender smile gracing her lips. "The desk guarded the secret. Now it will help unveil it." The following morning, the air outside was crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth and distant wood smoke. Evelyn had arranged for a local antique dealer, Mr. Elias Thorne, to visit. Thorne was a man of precise gestures and an even sharper eye, renowned for his discerning taste and frequently blunt appraisals. He arrived promptly at 10, a subtle hint of pipe tobacco clinging to his tweed jacket. "Mrs. Peterson," he greeted, his voice a low rumble, "you mentioned a piece of furniture you believed might be of interest." He surveyed their living room, his gaze sweeping over the various heirlooms and pre-owned treasures that filled their space, pausing momentarily on a particularly striking Victorian clock. "Yes, Mr. Thorne, the desk," Evelyn said, guiding him towards the corner where the old wooden desk now sat, cleaned and polished to the best of her ability. The rich mahogany gleamed, and the intricate, almost Celtic knot-like carvings on its panels seemed to hum with a quiet energy. Thorne approached it slowly, his hands clasped behind his back. He circled it, his head tilted, his eyes meticulously scanning every curve, every joint, every minute detail. He ran a gloved finger along one of the carvings, his expression inscrutable. Arthur stood silently by the doorway, observing the scene with a blend of hope and apprehension. After a protracted silence, Thorne knelt, scrutinizing the underside of the drawers, the construction of the legs. He meticulously pulled out each drawer, inspecting the dovetail joints, the aged timber. Evelyn held her breath. Finally he stood, dusting off his trousers. "It's an intriguing piece, Mrs. Peterson, clearly of considerable age. The craftsmanship is unusual, not typical of any regional style I immediately recognize." He tapped a finger against the desktop. "The wood, too, is of good quality, though perhaps not exotic." Evelyn's spirits sank slightly. "So it's not particularly valuable?" Thorne offered a small, almost imperceptible smile. "On the contrary, Mrs. Peterson, the unusual aspect is often what imbues a piece with value. Its distinctiveness, its narrative. The provenance, of course, would significantly enhance it. Do you know its history?" Evelyn hesitated. "Only that I acquired it at a yard sale." She decided against mentioning the letters for now. That was a story for historians, not for a potential buyer seeking a swift profit. Thorne nodded, a pensive expression on his face. "Well, without provenance, one must rely on the piece itself. The joinery is exquisite, though not without its quirks. The carvings, they speak of a masterful hand, an artisan perhaps, who operated outside the conventional workshops. I'd place it in the late 19th century, possibly American, but with strong European influences. He paused, then looked directly at Evelyn. I can offer you $2,000 for it. Evelyn gasped, a small, involuntary sound escaping her. $2,000. It was far more than she had dared to envision. Enough, she calculated rapidly, to at least initiate the conservation process. Arthur, too, looked surprised, a relieved smile slowly spreading across his face. That's very generous, Mr. Thorne, Evelyn managed to stammer. He nodded. It's a fair price for a piece of this character. I believe it will find an appreciative home. He pulled out a checkbook and a pen. If you're amenable, I can write you a check now and arrange for collection this afternoon. Evelyn looked at Arthur, who gave her an encouraging nod. Yes, Mr. Thorne, that would be wonderful. As Thorne completed writing the check, Evelyn felt a strange amalgam of relief and a pang of sorrow. She had grown fond of the old desk, the silent guardian of Thomas and Clara's story. But the letters, they were the true treasure. The check for $2,000 felt substantial in Evelyn's hand. After Mr. Thorne's van had rumbled away with the desk, leaving an echoing void in the corner of their living room, Evelyn sat at the kitchen table, the letters spread out before her. All right, my dear, Arthur said, pouring them both cups of tea. Now for the next step. Where do we begin? Evelyn took a deep breath. I've been researching online. There's a historical society in Richmond, Virginia that specializes in Civil War archives. They boast a renowned conservation department. She tapped a finger on one of the letters, and they're particularly keen on personal correspondence from that era. Richmond, eh? Arthur mused. A bit of a journey for us. A necessary one, Evelyn affirmed. I've already sent them an email, a very general inquiry, of course, without divulging too much. They replied, eager to learn more. A mischievous glint appeared in her eye. I think we should go in person. It feels more impactful. Arthur smiled. A grand adventure, then, for history. Over the next few days, Evelyn meticulously cataloged each letter, taking photographs and noting any particularly fragile areas. She researched proper archival storage, eventually purchasing acid-free tissue paper and archival sleeves, cradling each brittle page as if it were spun glass. The $2,000, she realized, wouldn't stretch as far as she initially thought. The conservation alone would likely consume a significant portion. One evening, as she was carefully placing the last letter into its protective sleeve, she noticed something she hadn't before. A faint, almost invisible watermark on the paper of one of Thomas's later letters. It was a small, intricate design, a swirling pattern that seemed to include a subtle M at its center. Arthur, come look at this, she called, her voice laced with excitement. He joined her at the dining table, peering at the letter. What is it, dear? This watermark, she said, pointing with a gloved finger. I've never seen it before. It's so faint, you have to hold it just right in the light. Arthur squinted. Yes, I see it now. A monogram of sorts? Perhaps, Evelyn murmured, her mind racing. A paper mill mark? Or perhaps a personal mark from a specific family? If it's unique, it could help confirm the authenticity of the letters, or even lead us to more information about Thomas or Clara. The realization filled her with a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't merely about preserving old letters, it was about piecing together a complex puzzle, a grand historical mystery that had been obscured for over a century. The desk had been a silent witness, a vessel. Now, armed with the funds it provided, Evelyn felt ready to become the voice that would finally bring Thomas and Clara's extraordinary story to light. She looked at Arthur, her eyes shining. This is just the beginning, isn't it? He reached out and gently squeezed her hand. I believe it is, my dear. I truly believe it is. The tea grew cold between them, forgotten in the quiet thrill of their unfolding discovery. The journey to Richmond and the revelation of an untold piece of history loomed large and exciting on the horizon.